You already know who it is. It is FBONE, aka Jared, the Galleria of podcasters. Before we get into discussing the futures of F1 and taking more listener voicemails, which are backed by popular demand, you all like them, so they're back. I just wanted to quickly remind you all that you can help me grow the show immensely by rating and reviewing the Formula Bone F1 show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It takes just 1 minute to do it on both, and I'd really appreciate it, as these ratings and reviews are super helpful in terms of increasing the discoverability of the Formula Bone F1 show on these platforms. You can only rate on Spotify, and you can both rate and review on Apple Podcasts. Here's a recent review of the show on Apple Podcasts from listener Matt Abeling. The rating is 5 stars. Thank you, Matt. Glad you're enjoying the show. And the review title is Boogity. The review is, "Boogity, boogity, boogity, let's go racing." Shouts to Matt for the review, and to Daryl Waltrip for this great catchphrase that I didn't really know about. I was not familiar with this NASCAR race start catchphrase until looking it up after reading this review. And that's just an all-time great race start catchphrase from Daryl Waltrip, okay? It's right there alongside Crofty just screaming into the mic, "It's lights out and away we go." But it's like way more just zany. Boogity, 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 let's go racing. He says boogity. I love that. Thank you for the review, Matt Abeling. If everybody here listening could please go rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, it would really help me out, and I'd love you for it. All right, let's get into it. This is the Formula Bone F1 show. FBONE! Welcome back to the Formula Bone F1 show, the Formula One podcast that trusts El Plan. I'm Jared Borislow, but you can call me J-Bone. Thank you for joining me here today, and away we go. Today's first topic is the futures of F1. Now, if you aren't familiar with how betting on Formula One or just sports betting in general works, let me briefly explain. So there are people in this world whose job it is to be a professional odds maker. Odds makers are tasked with coming up with the sports betting odds that you'll find at sports books, which are often referred to as Vegas odds, betting lines, or money lines. Odds making has become a lot more technological and algorithmic nowadays, a lot more data involved. It used to be just a bunch of degenerates in smoke-filled rooms screaming about intangibles and sometimes colluding with teams and players even. But now it's still just a bunch of degenerates in a room, but that room is also filled with spreadsheets and data and probably a lot of coffee, I would have to imagine. When the odds makers come up with their betting odds after consulting data, public sentiment, and a bazillion other factors I couldn't even begin to fathom, because they look at so much data when they come up with these betting lines, they produce a betting line that, generally speaking, indicates their educated guess as to the odds a specific sports result will occur, with the inclusion in that line of something called a VIG, which is a small cut of the line favoring the sports book in return for them hosting the bet. So if you aren't familiar with money lines, let's talk about it. They're the little notes like -110 or +220 that you'll see in parentheses next to a team or player before a race or game starts. The easiest way to interpret these, because they can look kind of daunting and confusing, because it's like, why is this one plus and this one negative, and why are they in the hundreds? It's easy to interpret once you know what you're looking for. If the line is negative, like -110, think of that as the amount of money you would need to bet in order to win $100. So if the line is, say, Lewis Hamilton to win the Monaco Grand Prix -110, that means if you bet $110 on Lewis to win the Monaco Grand Prix, you would win $100 if that bet hit. So that's how a negative money line works. If the line is positive, like +220, think of that as the amount of money you would win if you bet $100. So if the line is, say, Max Verstappen plus 220 to win the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, that means if you bet $100 on Max to win the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, you would win $220 if that bet hit. Does that make sense? I hope so, because I don't know if I can simplify that anymore. Now, I know some of you listening right now are like, hey, J-Bone, I don't care about any of this because I'm not a sports bettor, so why would I care about betting lines, right? Please go back to talking about F1 guy J-Bone. And to that I say, I am talking about F1. So, even if you don't sports bet, betting lines are, in my opinion, the most reliable things you can look at to try and predict the result of an F1 race or any other sporting event. The odds makers have access to the most insane banks of sports data and the most accurate and up-to-date sports algorithms in the world, and their lines would not exist if they weren't pretty accurate, because then the sportsbooks would all go out of business from people constantly taking their correct side over them. There's a lot of money involved here in making sure that these betting lines are pretty accurate. So when you see them, you can actually glean some pretty good data from them, and it can really change the way you look at a race or any sort of sporting event. Betting lines, in my opinion, contain the most informed possible sports predictions that you can have, unless you're that, octopus that predicts March Madness all the time correctly, which I don't understand. There's got to be a psychic octopus. When it's like, if you think about it, of all the animals in the world I wouldn't want to be psychic, octopus has got to be top of the list because they're like some of the smartest animals there are. So you combine smarts and psychic, and then I'm pretty sure now, thinking about it, I'm going to get killed by a psychic octopus. I wonder what the odds are on that. So personally, I always check betting lines before F1 races and any other sporting events to see who the data thinks is going to have a good race or a good game or a bad race. And then I use this to see if there's anybody that I'm underestimating or overestimating. Now, with all that in mind, I thought it would be fun, after explaining all that, to go over the current betting lines that are in play right now ahead of the 2022 F1 season. These far out betting lines are called futures bets because they're bets on things that are going to take place far in the future, which is why this segment is called the Futures of F1. Fun little play on words there for you guys. So here are the current lines, which are subject to frequent change, as all betting lines are. The more bets that come in and the more the odds makers see where people are betting, the line moves around to kind of even it out. So I'm grabbing these lines, by the way, from the sportsbook of Formula BONE sponsor MyBookie.ag, where you can, by the way, right now, get a double deposit bonus upon sign up with my promo code FORMULA, F-O-R-M-U-L-A, Formula. Stipulations apply, so make sure you read through those before you deposit. On MyBookie.ag, you can bet on every race on the F1 calendar, as well as the F1 futures that I'm about to get into. They also have lines for pretty much every sport you could ever want to bet on. So I recommend checking them out. They support the Formula BONE F1 show. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie at MyBookie.ag. Promo code FORMULA for a double deposit bonus. Stipulations apply. So these lines that I'm about to read are from MyBookie.ag. The first futures bet we're going to look at is which team will be named World Constructors Champion at the end of the 2022 season. The betting lines are as follows. Mercedes minus 265 is clearly showing Mercedes as the heavy favorite. So if you think Mercedes is going to be 2022's Constructors Champ, as many people do, because many people do partially, you'd need to bet $265 in order to win $100. So in taking this bet, you're risking $265 to hopefully win $100. So Vegas definitely thinks that Mercedes are going to win their 9th consecutive Constructors Championship. It's pretty interesting how confident they are considering the amount of unknowns that the new cars are going to present. It's a pretty big season here in terms of, it's been pretty easy to predict, relatively speaking, the Constructors Champion for the last, while. But it seems like with all these new changes and a lot of unknowns, Vegas has got a lot of confidence in Mercedes here. Do you think it won't be Mercedes? Then you're in luck if you're trying to place a bet, because every other team has a positive money line, meaning you would win more money than you bet if your bet were to hit. For example, Red Bull, to be the 2022 World Constructors Champion, is currently at plus 191, meaning a $100 bet would win you $191 if it were to hit. Ferrari is at plus 550, and then next up is kind of far down, okay? It's McLaren at plus 1925. So odds makers see a massive difference between Ferrari's chances to win and McLaren's, which is something to take note of. The odds makers really think Ferrari's got a better chance than McLaren. I mean, over 3 times as much of a chance, they think. Alpine is currently plus 3,100. That is 31 to 1. And after that, I feel like the rest don't really matter because those teams, they have no shot. But that's what people said about Leicester City Football Club, who started the 2015-2016 season at plus 500,000 odds to win the Premier League. That is 5,000 to 1. And they ended up winning. And some people who put small bets on Leicester winning the Premier League that year made tens of thousands of dollars. I think over $100,000 one person made from betting like $50 on this plus 500,000 bet. Which is crazy. Which just goes to show the betting lines can't always be trusted. They should always be taken with a grain of salt. But personally, from what I've seen and what I've experienced, they've got some pretty good information hidden within them if you kind of learn to just use them as a reference point and not something to blindly trust. Because obviously, if they were super trustworthy, you would just always bet the favorite every time. And in Formula One, all it takes is a puncture. Max in Azerbaijan. Imagine all the people who had Max in that race, how mad they were. Can't even imagine. I'm sure some of you are listening right now, and I apologize. It's not my fault, but I just feel bad for you. So because you never know, I will say the rest of the odds for you guys. AlphaTauri and Aston Martin are both plus 5,000. That's 50 to 1. Williams is plus 15,000, 150 to 1. And both Alfa Romeo and the Fighting Mazepins are plus 19,000. Personally, my own personal thoughts, I do think Mercedes are going to be the Constructors' Champs again in 2022, but I probably won't take that bet since I'm not a huge fan of the minus 265 money line. It seems like too much risk for not a lot of payout. We don't know what's going to happen next year. All these car changes, and putting $265 on the line to win 100 or any, similar bet like that where you're, betting 2.65 times what you might get in return just doesn't seem like a great bet to me. Instead, I'm considering taking Ferrari at plus 550. That's 5.5 to 1. Because of how amazing Carlos and Charles Leclerc finished the season, and because I know Binotto has been extra deep in perfecting his Ferrari master plan ever since the 2021 Mexican Grand Prix. He's been just in the lab cooking something up. What's he been cooking? I don't know. Excited to find out. Might put some money behind it. The next futures bet we're going to look at is the big one, okay? Who will be named 2022's World Drivers' Champion? Odds makers think this will be a much closer battle than the Constructors, so every bet here is a positive moneyline bet. Lewis is at plus 116, so you bet $100, get $116 if Lewis is the 2022 World Drivers' Champion. Reigning champion Max Verstappen is at plus 149. George Russell is at plus 420. Blaze it. Charles Leclerc is at plus 970. Big difference there between George and Charles Leclerc. Carlos Sainz is at plus 1575, plus 1,575. He is my pick for best value, considering the promise of the 2022 Ferrari and his amazing finish to the 2021 season. Lando is at plus 2,300. Checo is at plus 2,500. El Plando Alonso is at plus 3,200. So 32 to 1 odds if you want to put your El Plan money where your El Plan mouth is. Danny Rick is at plus 5,600. Ocon is at plus 5,800. Seb is at plus 11,000. Pierre plus 12,000, which a lot of people out there are like, wait, you're telling me Pierre Gasly, who had an unbelievable 2021, is 120 to 1? He is, which Vegas does not have a lot of trust in the AlphaTauri, okay? Which you can kind of get behind that, right? Because do you really think AlphaTauri is going to, like an AlphaTauri driver is going to beat a Red Bull driver? I just really don't feel like Red Bull would let that happen over the course of a season. Of course, AlphaTauri drivers beat Red Bull drivers sometimes. But over the course of a season, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think a essentially Red Bull B team driver is going to beat a Red Bull A team driver. That would just be really weird. But again, Leicester City won the Premier League. Anything can happen, which is why it's 120 to 1. It's not a bazillion to 1. It's possible. Next up, Lance. Whoa. Sorry, Lance Stroll interrupted me there for a second. He is at plus 13,000. Todd Benson, a.k.a. Valtteri Bottas, is at plus 18,000, which is absurd to look at after his stint at Mercedes to see his odds be that high. It's crazy. That's what happens when you change teams, Todd. The team was a gift, Todd. I'm taking it with me. Yuki Tsunoda is at plus 30,000, which is 300 to 1. Kind of enticing to sprinkle a little money onto after his finish at 2021. It's like, he was one of the better drivers at the end of the season there. After he got his sim rig and was just putting in hours practicing, he improved. So maybe he's spending every single day in the sim rig in the offseason. Who knows? Again, though, AlphaTauri, I don't think an AlphaTauri driver is going to be World Drivers' Champion. Next up, Alex Albon and Mick are both at plus 42,000. Blaze it, kind of. Go Tiffy is at plus 44,000. Guan Yu Zhou is at plus 65,000. Not coming in last, even though he's a rookie. He's not in last. Pulling up the rear as per usual. King Mazepin, if you want to bet on him to be the 2022 World Drivers' Champion, his odds are plus 100,000. That is 1,000 to 1 odds. If you put $1 on Mazepin and he wins, you will win $1,000. The funny thing about Mazepin being plus 100,000 is that coincidentally, that's how many dollars per week his allowance from his dad probably is. You know, every Friday, his bank account probably goes up by $100,000. Oh, to be the son of a billionaire. Seems like a pretty easy entry into Formula One. If only I was so lucky. So there you have the futures of F1. I'd love to hear from you guys on who you think the best and worst teams and drivers to bet on are. And remember, bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie at MyBookie.ag. Promo code FORMULA for a double deposit bonus. Stipulations apply. Next up, we have more listener voicemails from the Bone Phone. Listener voicemails are back by popular demand after a ton of you reached out to me saying you liked hearing from other listeners and hearing my responses to them. Call one. Here it is.
J-Bone, it's Joe from New York. First time, long time. You know, I've been with you since the beginning, and I love the show. But look, we got to talk about this Lewis Hamilton guy. He's out there giving everyone the silent treatment. What a drama queen. He puts the ham in Hamilton. 1 year doesn't go his way, and he throws a temper tantrum. He's had it made since he entered the sport. He didn't grind his way up the lower teams. He started with McLaren and then Mercedes. He's had the best car on the grid 10 of the last 15 years. Give me a break. Forget Formula One. Lewis, Toto Wolff, Mercedes, all these guys. Get them baby formula with all the crying they're doing. They call Lewis the GOAT. If Lewis was the champ everyone claims he is, he'd say, fine, you got me this year, but I'm coming back next year to dominate instead of this whole crybaby routine. That's why no matter what the numbers say, Schumacher will always be better than Hamilton. He was a real competitor. Anyway, J-Bone, you know I love the show. Keep it up. I'll talk to you soon. J-Bone!
Wow. I actually don't know how to respond to that call, so I'm going to have all of you respond to it in the comments. Head to the Formula Bone TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and or Discord once the video clip of it is live, and let's hear your thoughts on it, because I think this one is not meant to be responded to by me. It's meant to be responded to by everybody, because, you know, people see Lewis, you know, maybe potentially sitting out. A lot of people have different thoughts on it, and this absurd call from Joe from New York could be a good conversation starter for it. So, would love to see your comments. Next call.
Hey, J-Bone, this is Carl from New Hampshire. I was just curious what your thoughts were on a potential F1 race in the streets of Las Vegas, Nevada, given the fact that there's been a lot of rumors about that recently, and the infrastructure in Las Vegas is built for having a huge flyaway race there with the highest hotel capacity of any U.S. city, and the airport being right next to the Strip. Thanks. Bye.
So, fun fact, Vegas has actually hosted 2 Formula One Grand Prix. They were held in 1981 and 1982 at a temporary circuit that was set up in the parking lot of the Caesars Palace Hotel and Casino. Australian Alan Jones won the 1981 race, and Italian Michele Alboreto won the race in 1982. If the race were to return to Vegas, it's been stated by F1 rights holders Liberty Media that the race would no longer be held in a parking lot like it's a tailgate, farmer's market, or Miami Grand Prix. Oh, sorry. But rather on the famous Las Vegas Strip, right there between all the big, famous, world-famous hotels and casinos in the hub of the city. Vegas would be a perfect host. As this caller stated, the hotel and airport situation is already good to go, as are the extracurricular activities for event guests. There's something for everybody in Vegas, but just remember, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So if you go to the future Las Vegas Grand Prix, you're not allowed to tell anybody about it. That's just the rules. If you're, not from America, you may not know that, but if you go to Vegas, you're literally not allowed to tell anybody what you did there. It's part of their marketing campaign, right? Because you're like, dude, how was Vegas? And they're like, dude, I can't talk about it. And it makes you be like, oh my gosh, it must have been crazy. I need to go to Vegas. Very smart marketing from Vegas. Vegas does kind of market itself, but it helps to have people not talk at all about what they did there, which is kind of counterintuitive, but it works. So I would be a massive fan of this as someone who loves Formula One, gambling, and just Vegas vibes in general. And if this happens, I'd love for anyone listening right now to join me at the $5 blackjack tables at the Excalibur if you're old enough to gamble by the time this race actually happens, which could be in 2 years or 20. Who knows? I'm more of an Excalibur guy. A lot of people are like, "Oh, the Venetian, got to go to the Wynn," and it's like, they got $5 tables at the Excalibur. Can't really beat that. I'm not trying to put $25 a hand and stay in the casino for like 5 minutes. I'm trying to be there for a while. Just sit there, be there for 2 hours, and lose $15. Like that's Vegas to me. I'm picturing a future Las Vegas Grand Prix as being like the Monaco Grand Prix, but instead of being exclusive and high class and ritzy like Monaco, it's going to be more fun for normal attendees, like not people on yachts, because it'll be done in a way that's more inclusive. More people can experience it in the fancy way that a lot of people experience Monaco. It's also going to be trashy, but in a good way, and just undeniably American. The Las Vegas Grand Prix, if it happens, when it happens, is going to be a marquee event on the Formula One calendar. Probably one of the most attended, if not the most attended events, depending on, how many grandstands they're able to set up. Because the one big hang up with shutting down the Las Vegas Strip for a weekend is exactly what I just said. It's shutting. I don't know what permitting you're going to get to shut down the Las Vegas Strip for a weekend, but they do it in Monaco. Las Vegas Strip is definitely more, crowded. I've been there many times, and the Strip is very crowded with cars and people walking on it. So I'm not sure if the hotels and casinos are going to get behind it. They will, though, if they can be convinced that they're going to, be at capacity, because so many people are going to want to come to this race, which hopefully the promoters can do. Support for the Formula Bone F1 show is brought to you in part by Manscaped, who is the Max Verstappen of men's below-the-waist grooming, aka the current champion of the world. Manscaping is the art of taming a man's unruly body hair, which spans from the chest pubes down to the ball fro and below. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Here's the deal. I used to manscape with the same trimmer I used on my face, which is a big no-no because the hair from down there ain't supposed to be up here. I'm not proud of it. I regret it. It was gross. I know some of you listening have done it too, and that's why I love Manscaped, because they are here to solve this issue for us once and for all. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. They just launched their 4th-generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0, as you can guess, and it's the greatest groin and body trimmer ever created. The trimmer is waterproof, and it helps reduce a bunch of manscaping hazards, such as nicks, ingrown hairs, and grooming accidents. It also features wireless charging and comes with 4 guard lengths for the 4.0 for just the right trim. Manscaped also has a nose hair trimmer that, if you're watching the video, I have behind me right here, and I love it. It's an absolute godsend. I have a hairy face. Need this nose hair trimmer in my life. So glad I have one. If you need a nose hair trimmer, and you know if you need a nose hair trimmer, either that or your significant other knows, you should definitely get it. And get 20% off and free shipping on all Manscaped products with the code FBO at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code FBO. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. Thank you to Manscaped for supporting the Formula Bone F1 show. Time for some more calls.
J-Bone, it's Matt from New York. I have been playing a lot of Mario Kart 8 recently, and I was wondering if you could add one item from Mario Kart to F1, which one would it be? I think blue shells would be a little too game-breaking, so I don't know. I think maybe a green shell. It's not targeted, it's honest, it's fair, but yeah, would love your take. Thanks, J-Bone.
So, the blue shell is definitely too overpowered. I mean, if you've ever played Mario Kart, you know it's, oh, you're in first, hey, now you're not anymore. It's just too OP. And also, it would be pointless to have in Formula One because the only person who would ever get it is Nikita Mazepin, and he wouldn't be able to do anything for himself with it. It would just be like him being an agent of chaos, which he, kind of already is. And we don't need to further that anymore. So, but I do have 2 picks here, okay? I think the caller said to pick one. I couldn't, okay? Because I picked 2 that have very different purposes. The first is the honest banana peel. I'm just imagining someone getting a toe and thinking they're in like a really good position to do an overtake once they get to the straight, and then just getting spinaled by a potassium snack. Banana peels in F1, that is an idea that we could potentially use some testing of, because that would be fun. Now, the next item that I think would have a good place in Formula One is the mushroom, okay? F1 often gets criticized for straights being the main overtaking spots. Mushrooms that make your car, give it a speed boost would make it so overtakes could have happened anywhere on the track as long as the driver's good enough to, maneuver while getting a mushroom speed boost. Could be some very exciting stuff. Next call.
Hey, J-Bone, it's Kyle from Houston. I've been getting into some of the social media in Formula One, and I was wondering who you think has the best social media presence in Formula One. Take care, man.
So here are a few of my favorite Formula One social media follows. So if you've been looking for some more F1 accounts, got a few for you. First and foremost, if you're a Top Gear fan, the real Top Gear, by the way, not the American one, the Twitter account F1 portrayed by Top Gear is an absolute must follow. I don't know how they do it, but they somehow find a hilarious Top Gear moment to match seemingly every event that happens in Formula One. It is shocking to me how they're able to be like so quickly pull a perfect clip to match F1 news or whatever happens in a race. Now, as far as drivers go, you can't go wrong with Todd Benson, a.k.a. Terry Bottas, a.k.a. Valtteri Bottas. Bottas, however you say it, people always come at me, okay? I watched a video of Todd Benson, a.k.a. Valtteri Bottas, saying his name, and he says, my name is Valtteri Bottas. Bottas. It's like very soft O, Bottas. So that's how I say it, okay? I'm trying to say it how he says it. I'm not trying to say it how people want me to say it. I'm doing my own thing, you know? But anyways, back to Terry Botas. He recently posted an Instagram story of himself doing a censored naked handstand. And if that doesn't get you to follow him, I don't know what will. And then as far as teams go, if for some reason you don't already follow the Haas Twitter account, I'm a big fan of the Haas Twitter admin, mostly because of their caption, "The streets will never forget," on Mazepin's fastest lap at the Belgian Grand Prix, that the streets quite literally soon forgot because it was deleted from the record book. But still, the Haas Twitter admin tweeting that made me a Haas Twitter admin stan. You got to follow Haas. They are also very good at being self-deprecating, considering how bad they currently are. They do a good job of it's not like all gloom, but it's also not all happiness. It's like, you know, they know where they're at. They know how to talk when they're in the Haas position. This episode of the Formula Bone F1 Show is brought to you in part by my favorite leg garment manufacturers, Birddogs. I wear Birddogs shorts, pants, and joggers constantly. I just scooped 2 new pairs of their joggers, and I love them so much that I recently decided to always jog now instead of ever walking, so that I can be a true joggers guy. That's facts. Birddogs built-in underwear, yes, built-in underwear, feels better on my skin than the finest cashmere, and is also super breathable and doesn't bunch up like traditional underwear does. You can get Birddogs shorts, pants, and joggers with or without the built-in underwear, but I highly recommend getting it with because, well, if you've ever worn leg garments with built-in underwear, you know why. It is indescribably amazing, and it also saves time and life. You don't have to wash, I need to wash my joggers and my underwear. No, you wash them at the same time. It's so easy. Head to birddogs.com and get yourself the best shorts, pants, and joggers on planet Earth. And do not forget to use my code FBONE, that is FBONE, so that they throw in a free whistle tip football. Yes, I said whistle tip football. Remember those Nerf Vortex Howler footballs that whistle when you throw them? Birddogs version is even better. Rumor has it, they fly so far that F1 engineers study Birddogs whistle tip footballs to glean aerodynamics data from them that they can then apply to their cars. That's a true story. Maybe. Potentially. Go to birddogs.com right now. Load your cart up with the best shorts, pants, and joggers available on planet Earth. Plug in promo code FBONE, that's FBONE, to get that free whistling football and live happily ever after. That's birddogs.com, promo code FBONE, FBONE. There's a link for that deal in the description of this episode. Thank you to Birddogs for supporting the Formula Bone F1 show. All right, here, another call.
What's up, Jared? This is Alex calling from St. Pete. I know you're a soccer fan, so I had a question. Which soccer player, could be current player or retired, do you think will make a good or bad F1 driver?
I've got some thoughts here. F1 drivers need to be good at moving around and maneuvering in tight spaces. So naturally, I'm thinking Harry Kane here. Obvious choice. He's the king of scoring within the 6-yard box, you know. He's always maneuvering around like an oiled up fish, moving around defenders and just getting that foot and or head or whatever body part he wants to use onto the ball. Come on, you Spurs. F1 drivers also need to have very strong legs in order to achieve maximum brake pressure. So I'm going to say Steven Gerrard's a solid option there. That man, you know, release the Kraken. Steven Gerrard's got a cannon for a leg. I met him once. Nice guy. But if we're just going off of who would be the scariest driver to face off against, like who, if I'm driving and I see them coming on the inside, I'm just giving it to them, going to have to go with Akinfenwa, even though I highly doubt he could fit into an F1 car. Thank you so much for joining me here for another F1 off-season episode of the Formula Bone F1 show. Before I get going, I'd like to run you through all the things you can access via the links that I've placed in the description of this episode. You can help support the Formula Bone F1 show financially by buying Formula Bone merch. If you are watching this right now, I am wearing a Formula Bone F1 show t-shirt. Check it out. Woo! You can buy it right now via the link in the description of this episode. You can also support the show financially in an even greater capacity by supporting today's sponsors. That's MyBookie, promo code FORMULA at MyBookie.ag for a double deposit bonus. Stipulations apply. Manscaped, promo code FBO at Manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping. And promo code FBONE at Birddogs.com for a free whistle tip football when you shop Birddogs' best leg garments in the world. You can watch me live stream myself playing the F1 video game on Twitch and talk to me in chat while I do it via, another link in the description of this episode. You can also join the Formula Bone Discord server, which now has over 200 members talking about F1 on the regular. And you can follow me, J-Bone, everywhere on social media at Jared Borislow. That's JaredBorislow. All that you can find in the description of this episode. If you're now all caught up on the Formula Bone F1 show, but want to keep hearing my voice, I co-host a comedy podcast called the Ross Bolen Podcast, where we share a ton of laughs, covering a wide variety of topics, including current events, non-F1 sports, music, food, funny news stories, cool animals, insane history, so much more. Truly a show about everything. If you like this podcast, the Formula One F1 show, I promise you will like the Ross Bolen Podcast. That is RossBolen. Check it out wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. It's time for the NPR style sign-off. The Formula Bone F1 show is recorded in Austin, Texas, and brought to you by Bolen Media. It's hosted by me, Jared J-Bone Borislow. And I also produce the show because I'm a content machine. Cade Orris makes a bunch of the show clips that you see on social media at Formula Bone. Our iconic theme music and Twitch stream music is by 7 to Midnight. You can follow him on social media at the number 7TO Midnight. You can follow the show on social media by following at Formula Bone everywhere. You can watch the show on YouTube by searching Formula Bone. You can help the show gain new listeners by rating and reviewing the Formula Bone F1 show on Apple Podcasts and by rating it on Spotify. Until next time, J-Bone!